May I have a roll call, please?
Babcock?
Here.
Chapman?
Here.
Egbert?
Here.
Hahn?
Here.
Morrison?
Here.
Steepers?
Here.
Fearon?
Here.
This evening we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by some Central Road students. I'd like to ask Jenny Garcia-Macco to come up and introduce the students that are going to lead us in the pledge.
Dr. Thompson, school board members. My name is Jenny Garcia-Macco, and I'm the principal at Central Road. With me this evening are members of our Lego League team. These students have worked very hard this fall. They come in after school, on weekends, and stay in at lunch, getting ready for the contest next month. They're very excited, and we're very proud of them. We know they're going to do very well. So now our two coaches are Tom Myers and Lynn Garb, and our students will introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Kylie McMichael.
Hi, I'm Lily Kim.
Hi, I'm Samar Jacobecker.
Hi, I'm Arvind Kumar.
In honor of our veterans, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item in my section is a recognition of the 6th grade district cross-country winners. And to make those presentations, I'm going to ask Kate Ehrenberg to come up. Kate is the new coordinator of Fine Arts, Music, and PE.
Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Thompson said, I am Kate Ehrenberg, the District Fine Arts Coordinator, and I'm very excited to recognize our 6th grade cross-country winners this evening. Jesse Owens, an Olympic gold medalist runner, said, "We all have dreams. In order to make dreams come into reality, it takes an awful lot of determination, dedication, self-discipline, and effort." With that being said, we had 433 runners that gathered at Salk Park in Rolling Meadows on Wednesday, September 30th. We had 6 races total, a boys and girls race from each division. The green division schools were Hunting Ridge, Lake Louise, Lincoln, Virginia Lake, and Paddock. The yellow division schools were Whiteley, Central Road, Pleasant Hill, Jane Addams, and Kimball Hill. And the blue division schools were Thomas Jefferson, Marion Jordan, Winston Elementary, Willow Bend, and Sanborn. The crowd was filled with excited parents, teachers, administrators, friends, and other spectators. The students put in a lot of time with their intramural coach and were given a taste of what it would be like to be a part of a junior high cross-country team. Congratulations to all of the participants that day, and we're here to recognize the winners of each of those division races. So I call up Gary to introduce his student.
Hi, Gary Simonian from Stewart R. Paddock. I'd like to recognize Elizabeth from Paddock School. Congratulations.
My name is David Sobel, and I'm from Hunting Ridge, and I'd like to congratulate Beck for winning his division for the cross-country meet.
Good evening. I'm Terry Graff from Central Road, and I would like to recognize our first place girls division, Rylan.
Hi, I'm Barb Roberts from Pleasant Hill, and I'd like to recognize my student Braden for taking first place in the Yellow Boys division.
Hello, I'm Sharon Rusk, and I'm here to introduce Veronica. Congratulations on your first place win.
Good evening. Mike Duffy from Merriam Jordan. This is our first place winner, Marcel.
Congratulations to the first place runners and all of the students that participated in our exciting event. Thank you also to our PE teachers in the district for preparing their students for this exciting event. Have a great evening.
If I ran that much, maybe I'd be happy.
The next recognition is going to be presented by Lisa Nuss, our Executive Director of Human Resources. We have a lot of teachers that go above and beyond in the school district, and a few of them were recognized this year as those who excel, the state award for those people that really do go above and beyond.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. President Babcock, Dr. Thompson, members of the board, distinguished guests, it's truly my pleasure to be here tonight to recognize those who won the Those Who Excel Award. Those Who Excel is an award by the Illinois State Board of Education that recognizes people who go above and beyond and really have contributed a significant dedication to our school systems. This year, there were 250 people who were recognized statewide in the whole state of Illinois, and we are so proud that 8 of those people are here in District 15. So I'm going to ask each of our award winners to come up with their nominee one at a time, and the nominees are their administrators who will have a few words to say about them. The first group was a group that won the recognition award in the category of team, and that was the Hunting Ridge office staff. Those people are Teresa Ostich, who's the school nurse, Julie Simpson, who's the school secretary, and Corey Hamilton, who is the office clerical. And they will be addressed by Christy Seifert. So can those people come up front?
President Backpack, Dr. Thompson, Board of Education, Lisa, thank you very much for having us here this evening. It is truly an honor and a privilege to be standing next to these lovely ladies this evening, and it seems hard to believe that only a year ago I was blessed with the honor of joining them in the front office at Hunting Ridge. We refer to them in our nomination letter as the Dream Team, and I can't go on enough to describe just how much a dream it is to go to work with these 3 wonderful ladies each day. When you read their individual job descriptions, you would see a school nurse, a school secretary, and a school clerical, but their roles go much beyond what that looks like on paper. And these ladies work together as a team in every way that they possibly can. A phone that rings, a parent that walks in the door. There's never not a smile on their face or a smile in their heart as they reach out to the community that we love so dearly. They've embraced our community in so many ways, all of them having had children go through District 15. Julie's daughters went to Marion Jordan and on to Sunlink. Corey's 2 sons went through several schools in our district, at Hunting Ridge, moving on to Plum Grove, and then also on to Friend. And Teresa's 5 children all went through Hunting Ridge. And it serves as a huge testament to our building and to our staff to see that they were willing to come back and to give to us. So we are truly so blessed by these wonderful ladies, and we are so honored that the state realized that as well, just how fortunate we are to be in their presence each and every day. And it makes me proud to be in District 15. So ladies, we love you and we thank you for everything you do. It is truly an honor to work with such wonderful people.
The next award is a merit award.
No, Teresa.
Were you leaving? The next award is a merit award for the student support personnel category, and that was awarded to Cindy Wong, who's a social worker at Willow Bend, and we're going to have her and Melissa Sabatino, her principal, come and speak.
Okay, so that's a tough act to follow. But greetings. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here this evening. Cindy Wong is amazing. She's the social worker at Willow Bend, and students these days come to school with so many needs. Actually, staff do too. And to be everything to everybody is more than a teacher can do and still be effective in the classroom. So we have Cindy in our building. And I was thinking, recently I've been thinking that more than what you do is who you are. And who she is downright amazing. She has a heart that fills this room, and a practical, dignified approach to situations as they arise. It's astounding. If you are privileged to have a walk in our building, you'll hear Cindy called from every corner of the building several times a day to meet every kind of need, and she's always there. So she's also proactive. She's not just putting out fires. She's building esteem in kids. She has yoga classes. She goes in to lay the foundation of excellent skills for our kids proactively across the board in every grade level. I mean, she's remarkable, and we are really privileged to have her. It's a privilege to recognize her, a privilege to work with her. So, thanks, Cindy.
The next award is an award of merit in the category of classroom teacher, and that award is for Cindy Zivel, who I'd like to ask to come up here with her principal, Bob Harris.
Board, thank you very much. Dr. Thompson. I just want to say that Cindy is one of the sweetest and nicest people I've ever met in my life, and that is the truth. She started in a different job. She was in Parks and Rec to start off her career, and she used to babysit for David Corbett's son. And David Corbett noticed something in her because she would have lesson plans for her son when he was being a principal, and he talked her into becoming a teacher. One thing I know about her is that she cares about her students. I brought a student over here a little while ago who did our pledge for us, and he is in her class. And he said that she doesn't just care about one of us. She cares about all of us, and that is the truth. She is loved by the community, staff, and especially the students, and I couldn't be more proud to have her part of our staff. Sadly, she will be retiring this year. I've tried to talk her out of it many times, but very proud of her. So Cindy, congratulations.
The next award is an award of excellence in the category of educational service personnel. And this person did such a phenomenal job last year and many years before that. When there was an opening in personnel, I quickly snatched her up. So I'm very sorry to her principal, Jeff Brown, who was sad to see her go, but I really was blessed to have her join my staff. That person is Kristen Fortunato, and Jeff Brown will be speaking about her.
President Babcock, Superintendent Thompson, members of the board, the administrative cabinet, and audience members, it is a tremendous honor for me to stand before you this evening in recognition of Mrs. Fortunato. I think with the turnout that we had and the raucous audience in terms of receiving her, it really speaks as a testimony to just the legacy that she's left at Sanborn School. Kristen would come to school early and stay late every day. We'd tell her to go home, she wouldn't. That's just the nature of who she is as a human being. She too is a former District 15 parent. She cares very, very deeply about the Palatine community and really feels a tremendous calling to serve the families and primarily the children of this particular community. And I remember when I learned that Mrs. Fortunato was going to be leaving us at Sanborn, and that really isn't a product of anything other than just the disappointment of knowing that we'd be losing somebody that we get to see every day in our building who just makes a profound difference in each one of our lives. She's service-minded, she's caring, she's thoughtful, she's respectful, she's an A-plus performer in everything that she does. But the bottom line simply is this: she's one of the best human beings I know. And so for the state to award her this recognition of excellence, quite frankly, was the biggest no-brainer in the history of Earth. She's one of the most incredible individuals I know, and I certainly offer my congratulations on behalf of the entire Sanborn community to Mrs. Fortunato. Thank you so much.
The next award is an award of excellence for school administrator, and that was awarded to Dr. Laura Swanlin, who will be introduced by Principal Kathy Plummer.
Dr. Thompson, school board, guests, it's my privilege and an honor to recognize Laura Swanland. It's been a joy to watch Laura blossom from a very competent doctoral student in one of my classes at Loyola to an excellent school psychologist to an exemplary administrator this early in her career. Laura's work is distinguished, as any team that you would talk with, the school would say Laura has added so much to the work of their schools. She's developed systems, developed people with excellence and with care. It's also important her commitment to social justice has been a part of her career throughout her work. And not only does she show servant leadership to our district, but she also contributes tremendously through the community through a group called Girls Rock, where she mentors young women in music. And one of the things that, even though Laura is well known as a data maven in our district, it's not known that she's also a Renaissance woman, in that she's a very accomplished harpist and musician. So we're honored and privileged to have Laura as part of our team, and congratulations.
There was one award winner who was unable to make it tonight, and her name was Chelsea Blanchfield. And she, oh, is she here? I couldn't find her. Oh, come up, come up. You snuck in the back. I was so sad you weren't here. So Chelsea won a recognition award for early career, and she will be introduced by Christy Samagenti. I didn't see you either.
I'm a little biased, but we saved the best for last. Just teasing. You're all wonderful. Good evening. Hello. Welcome. I had the privilege of working with Chelsea for 2 years at Paddock. I'm currently at Jane Addams this school year, but I had the privilege of knowing Chelsea, hiring her, and working with her for 2 years. And at that time, I came to know Chelsea as a very student-centered teacher with a heart of gold. Chelsea did many noteworthy things that established a connection with students, but it really was a relationship that she built with one student in particular that was inspiring. After a full year of managing tremendous ups and downs, highs and lows with this student, at the end of the school year, we came to the realization that our grade level would be reduced by one section in her grade level, and we knew that Chelsea either needed to move to a grade level below the grade level she was currently teaching or move up a grade level. She initiated a conversation with me about moving up a grade level so that she could follow this student, so that he could have a smooth transition, have a welcome, warm, familiar face, so that he would have a successful year. That really moved me. It was one of the most profound moments that I had had, the most honorable request that I had ever had a teacher make of me, and I was really impressed by her connection with this student. She jokingly talked with the boy about following him through his career. She ultimately did not move to that grade level, but she told him, "I'm going to have my eyes on you." And he said, "How long?" And she said, "A long time." And he's like, "Till 6th grade?" And she said, "Longer." He said, "High school?" And she said, "Longer." And he said, "College?" She said, "Yeah, till college. I'm going to have my eye on you." And so in speaking with her tonight, doing a little socializing with some paddock people, she was telling that story again and reaffirmed today to him that she was keeping her eye on him until college. So he is doing well. But it's those connections that Chelsea built as a classroom teacher that are going to have a lifelong impact on the students well beyond their year with her. And so this recognition is well deserved, and I'm very proud. Congratulations.
It's important to note that District 15 is such a rich history of excellence, and I think the foundation of that history is the excellent people that are here, our students, our families, and our staff. And as I look at the people who are recognized tonight, I see people who I've worked with as colleagues, people that I see every day, people who I've worked with as parents, and people I've worked with their husbands. And it just reminded me how much you are really part of this District 15 family, and we're so lucky to have you. So thank you all, and these awards are very well deserved. Dr. Thompson?
Yeah, I think Tim would like to take a photograph of all the recipients, and the board would like to come down and thank you. And we have our Above and Beyond pin, because you definitely have gone above and beyond. And those pins are given out really carefully. Not very many of them have been given out. So.
You only need to tap. If you tap to the right. Yeah, it's okay. I need something sweet. You're gonna smell good. Pressure. No, I'm gonna need one. Just if you can smell it.
Yeah, that's nice. Pretty good.
All right, we're ready to move on now to the third item in my section. It's the 5-year financial projections. I'm going to ask Mr. Adamczyk to come up and make that presentation, please.
I see the audience is extremely interested in this presentation. Just an observation.
I'm offended. Offended. Well, good afternoon. Good evening. President Babcock, I guess it's as high as it's going. President Babcock, Superintendent Thompson, members of the board, we review our financial projections twice a year, usually in the spring. Usually we do it in the spring, and also in the fall. So all I have to do is tap. Oh, I tap too quick. Tapped way too fast.
You're not over technology.
No. I'm used to my computer on my desktop. There we go. So I apologize. Part of the forecast, and Corey Boltemeyer will discuss the tax levy later tonight, is the tax levy that we use for the next 5 years. Obviously, is an important part of our budget. It provides about 77% of our revenue and property taxes. We've got $10 million in new growth beginning with the 2015 levy. It's averaged about $8.64 million over the last 5 years. We may have a little bit more higher this year. I know the former Sheraton Hotel in Arlington Heights has been constructed the last 2 years. It's about 80% occupied at this point. So we may see a little bit more than 8.64 than we have over the last 5 years, but we're really close. 8.64, $10 million in new growth. 10-year rolling average CPI in PTEL over the last 5 years is about 2.13 to 3.05%. District has experienced about a 1/3 decline in its EAV since 2008. It actually stopped last year. Our EAV actually for the 2014 levy, Corey will talk about it a little bit more, actually went up a little bit last year. So it was the first time in about, I think, 4 or 5 years it had been continually declining. We also assumed a level EAV in 2015 with small increases in 2016 year after that. That really doesn't have an effect on the total tax dollars coming in if the EAV goes up. Just has an effect on the rate. So really important things, the tax levy is what's the percentage increase, CPI. Corey will talk about that. I'm taking all his thunder away. It's going to be 0.8 for 2015. That's average 2.13 to 3.05. And the new growth. Those are the two important parts on the tax levy. General state aid is prorated this year. 92% was prorated, 92% in fiscal year 15, which was 14-15 school year. I've left that at 92% going on out. Interestingly, this year, District 15 has experienced a 6.38% reduction in its poverty population, or about 137 students from fiscal year 14 to fiscal year 15. We talked to ISB down in Springfield. They said that's consistent. Poverty counts have gone down about 6.4% statewide. We think basically it's the way the state is counting students that are in poverty, looking at different programs where students qualify for free and reduced. We've seen that with our own students that have qualified for free and reduced this year. So we see that. We've seen that our poverty count go down, as has the state. Which then translates into lower GSA revenue. Two parts of the GSA is the poverty count, and then the general state aid, which is state aid not based on poverty. They're about 50-50 in District 15. Half is poverty, half is the non-poverty part. So as we see those levels go down, then we also see our GSA revenue go down. But conversely, I think as we see that go down statewide, then there may be more money that's distributed throughout the state because everybody else's poverty is going down. That remains to be seen. We don't know what that's going to happen in the future, so I just left it the same. All other state category revenue sources have remained the same 5 years going out. I was reading some old Ed Red notes today, and the amount of state support for public schools in 2015 was lower than the state provided in 2006. So in the 05-06 school year, state of Illinois gave more in general state aid in all categorical revenues, more support for public schools in 2006, fiscal year 06 than they granted in fiscal year 15. So 9 years, and you know what, honestly, that'd be the same in 2016, our current school year, because we really saw no increases in state aid from fiscal year 15 to fiscal year 16. Basically the same. So really, we're getting less money than we did 10 years ago. No increases in our commercial, our property replacement taxes or investment income. Investment income may go up a little bit. We keep hearing about the Fed raising the Fed rate. Honestly, if that goes up a little bit, we're not going to see the types of investment income that we saw probably around 1999, 2000. We get about 1.5% on investments now. I remember what I call it the good old days, and we would get 4.5%, 5% on investments. We're not going to see that anytime at all in the near future. It might pop up a little bit, even depending what the Fed does, but it's not going to be a big windfall for the district. 1% salary increases for all employees upon expiration of their current negotiated agreements. If they have a negotiated agreement, obviously we have those percentages in there. Classroom Teachers Council, the teacher's contract expires at the end of 15-16. DTU, we just negotiated a 5-year contract with the Transportation Union. Again, teachers is 16, 17 is ESPA, which is the secretaries, I believe, and also SEIU goes through 2017. And I think OTPT goes through 2017 as well. So we have those next year. Current regressive salary grid, I've talked about this every year. It's a 2% step increase for Tier 1, 2.75 for Tier 2. And I just basically have it right there. Average step increase is 3.23 in Tier 1 and 2.75% in Tier 2. So if that regressive salary grid were to go away, the 2% step increases that we've seen or enjoyed as a district with this current contract would automatically bump up to 3.23%. But I have factored that in. What I do is I take all the employees and I step them one step through 1920. So actually in the 5-year forecast, we see 3.23% step increases for Tier 1 and 2.75% for Tier 2. Health, 7% annual increase in health benefit costs. That's really medical inflation of what it's running at, what we've experienced in District 15 on our self-insured health. It's actually been about static. I mean, when we look at what we pay for our self-insured health on the PPO, we went self-insured on our HMO. Over the last 4 to 5 years, our dollar amount that we've paid out in claims has stayed the same. So we've really done a fantastic job. Administration on the insurance committee and CTC is on that as well. So I think we've done an excellent job controlling healthcare costs in the district. So obviously, if we can continue to control those healthcare costs going forward and not see the 7% annual increases, we'll save a lot of bit of money. We spend about $22, $23 million a year district-wide on health insurance. So to the extent we can keep that 7% down and keep it where we've been, we can see some nice savings going forward on that. Affordable Care Act, we don't know how that's going to affect us yet. We have some higher fees coming in. There's a Cadillac tax that comes in about 4 or 5 years down the road. When I look at our premiums, I don't think we're going to hit that Cadillac tax, which means there's an extra fee that we'd have to pay. But we're keeping an eye on that. I don't see that being an issue in the foreseeable future. We've added 4 CTC positions from 2014-15. Then I've kept that static through 1920. I do hope I can do an enrollment projection in January or February, and that may dictate a little bit more what our staffing looks like. And I think I've got a way we can do that. The district really has not done a staffing enrollment forecast, at least in the 5 or 6 years I've been here. So we'll attempt to get that done in January, and then we'll try and incorporate that into the 5-year forecast that we do in March. And then I've got capital project, spending remaining the constant $3 million annually. That's been a board goal. Some years we've exceeded that. We've had extra projects on top of the $3 million. And we had the chiller go at Winston campus for $800,000. And we have had other items that have gone out there, and the board allocated extra money for some fire alarm replacements at 5 buildings this year. So it's not been $3 million over the past. I mean, we as a district have exceeded that over the past. But I've kept that constant over the future, $3 million. Then we have revenue by fund. We take all of our funds together, which is at O&M transportation, IMRF, Social Security, capital projects. Working cash is really nothing. And our torch fund, which is all of our insurance costs, mostly workers' comp insurance. In our health life safety fund, we had the revenues And the same with expenditures, and I won't spend a lot of time on that. And then we look at what our ending fund balances are, 14, 15, 15, 16. We have our actual audited results that we put in the 5-year forecast. The board will get a presentation on that tonight. Actually, I think that's the next agenda item. The adopted budget for the current school year had a $1.6 million deficit. Most of that was the math adoption of about $1.5 million for the current year. Putting that all into our 5-year forecast going out through 1920, you can see we're running small deficits, 2.4, 2.5, 2.1, and about $2 million through 1920. The 0.8% CPI rate in the 15 levy has not been advantageous on our revenue, as I've discussed before. There's no provision in there for possible property tax freeze. That's been discussed in Springfield. If that did go into effect in Cook County, that would be our 18, 19, and 19, 20 fiscal years. We just don't know where that's going to go, if any place. Pension reform, we've talked, that's been bantied about, with, transferring some of the cost down to the local levels. We don't have there's been really nothing new on that front in about 7 or 8 months. On pension reform, because really not much is going on in Springfield at this point, at least not with the budget. So I've got nothing in there on that. So those are two fairly big ifs that could happen. And then Senate Bill 1. We've talked about Senate Bill 1 before. The last iteration of that bill showed our revenue going down by about $9.6 million per year if that were to go into effect. That's been put, that's not even that's not even a discussion in Springfield at this point, so obviously I've not put anything in that 5-year forecast for that too. But those are just some items that are still out there that we just don't know what the effect of those are going to be. And we continue to monitor them, and we'll see where those go in the future.
And the slide that's up there now is different from the slide that you received in your packet. We put the adopted budget in the second column, and that's really the only numbers that have changed. Some of the percentages in the bottom have changed, some of the totals. And I'll send you that updated sheet so you can have that for your reference. But you can see the adopted budget that the board adopted earlier this year as Mike said, had a $1.6 million deficit, which was, most of that was due to the math adoption. And we had made some reductions in spending and supplies and purchase services, and so we got it down to what we thought was a balanced budget, except for that math adoption, one-time expenditure.
So just a quick question. I'm seeing, I saw that was my question, so thanks for answering that. I continue to see a trend of us having, deficit every year through 2020. I think when we first started out a couple of years ago or last year, we were going to start seeing positive trend, at least on the forecast from, I believe, 2016 or 2017, 2018. So where do you see this $2.4 million, 2.5, 2.1, 1.9 deficit the next 4 years? I get it. This year is the math adoption. What is this next 4 years? Why are we seeing the deficit there?
Well, I think one of the big things like I've talked about is that the CPI rate of 0.8 which keeps 77% of our revenue is property taxes. That's going to 0.8%. That's affected us negatively. That hasn't helped well. It's really as we trend those lines out, we trend them conservatively. It's hard to identify one spot. It's hard for me to identify one line item. We probably have 2,000 line items in the budget where we say this one line item is going to cause it. We're using it as a planning tool. We see we're running those. You're right, we have looked at those in the past. We've seen deficits. We had a deficit budgeted for 14-15. We've come out to the positive. I've talked about this every year. I've been up here too. We get our numbers. One item that we're always off on, it seems, is budget to actual is healthcare costs. Our consultants tell us 7%. That's healthcare inflation. We've come in at 0% every year on that, and we've saved probably on average about $1.5 million on health. If that were to continue, it brings those numbers down by quite a bit. Also means we need to look at sharpening our pencil going forward and see how we can get those down to zeros too.
Because to me, even if I do $1.5 million savings, it puts us still at a deficit of $900,000, which is, again, pointing me towards a structural deficit, right? Which is one of the things that we've worked extremely hard as a board to not have. And this is going, we are, at the end of this year, we are at 35%, 35.39% in the fund balance of expend versus uses, versus going down to 27.67 for folks who can't see that. That's, a reduction of about 6 to 7% in our reserve funds, which is, again, going towards, if you trend it, right, on an average, it's going 3% lower. You are going in a structural deficit right here. And I think that's one of the things, I understand the 1.5 from the healthcare, but we're still $1 million in deficit. Where is that deficit?
Well, I think what Mike and I have talked about is we want to have, this is a planning document, and our planning document for 14 and 15 had us at a $2.5 million deficit, and now we've got an $800,000 surplus. So we saw a swing of about $2.5 million, right, Mike? It was 1.7.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, correct, 1.7.
So, it's a conservative document, it's a planning document, but the execution of the numbers is something different, and that's what our audited financials are, and we'll see tonight that we're doing pretty well with our audited financials for the last year. We anticipate these numbers to go down, and you can see, even though you're pointing to a consistent deficit, it's getting smaller as we go out, so it's not really then a structural deficit. It would be getting bigger if it was a structural deficit.
It actually does not. If you look from 2016 to 2017, it is going up.
Yeah, but then in 2019 and 20, it's down to less than $2 million.
I get it. If it's not a structural deficit, and I strongly believe, I understand this is a planning document, and I fully adhere to that. But the fact that, you can't plan for negatives right at the get-go, right? I've said it before, and I say it again. If I go in and say my project's going to be 3 months late, right at the get-go, it's, even though it's just a planning, it's a conservative estimate, I'm going to get shot right there. You have to figure out ways of how you can get the project, you go, hey, here's some of the items that will bring us on time, in scope, on schedule. And, we all deal with it. I'm sure everyone who's in a public sector or private sector, as attorneys, if you go to a court case and say, we're going to lose right at the get-go, nobody's going to come to you and hire you as an attorney.
I'd make a couple of comments. Number one, I'm not advocating that any of you get shot. I think that's totally inappropriate. The whole point in putting this before the board is preceded with a number of projected and assumptions that may or may not be valid. As a board, if we don't like this position, and we didn't like it last year and when we reviewed the budget, and remember we came back and asked you to relook at that, and you came back with what was essentially a balanced budget except for the math. Well, we're going to face that same issue every year as we go forward. I don't think any of us want to adopt a budget that's going to continue to have a deficit position, but we don't know moving forward what's going to change from year to year on the assumptions. Our job as a board is to monitor this and to make sure that this projection doesn't occur. And that means that when we make our decisions in terms of our levy and in terms of our budget adoptions, that's when we give the direction to the administration that that's not acceptable. And every time we make that decision, 1 year puts us in a better position that carries all the way through. So if we saved $1 million, or we cut the budget by $1 million this year, that's $1 million that's going to affect every year thereafter. So to me, I think we don't like this, but we're going to continue to monitor it, and we'll make the decisions or give you the direction to get us in a better position. The other thing is, I have confidence in the administration based on what you did last year. We looked like we were in a deficit position. You knew that board didn't want that to occur. We got the report at the end of the year that you monitored expenditures as we went through the year, and we came out of it with a position which was much more in line with the way we would like it to have been. So in some cases, perhaps we could say this is a worst-case scenario. I look at it as a scenario that we don't want to live with, and then we make sure as we go year to year that we do whatever we can do as a board to make the decisions to see that that does not occur.
So just to add clarity, 2 points. By shot, I mean the idea will be shot, not shot physically. So just to clarify that.
Just a little sensitive, though.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to clarify it. Shot in the sense means the idea is usually shot because you don't want to go in with saying, hey, I'm going to be 3 months late. That's one. The other is if we look at the adopted budgets and stuff, and if we gained $1 million and we are positive, looking at these numbers, these don't indicate that those have carried through from year to year. I understand by stating the fact that we are going to adopt a budget with a negative deficit, we are saying it's okay for us to accept a deficit spending. Regardless of which way, you know, I have full confidence in the control of the expenditure and everything from the administration. I'm not questioning that. But by just adopting a deficit budget, you're setting a precedent of saying you're okay. Even if we come at a negative expense, even if it's not $1.5 million or $2.4 million, even if it's a fraction of that, it's okay. That's not right, because we should not be in a deficit spending period. It's a structural issue if you're carrying it from year to year to year.
But we do not have all of the information, and there's no way to get the information other than to, it's not a guess and you know, by gosh and guess right now. There isn't information available, so we have to make assumptions. It doesn't mean that I understand adopted, but this is all a planning document. This is not this is what we're going to live with. We haven't in the past several years. We've never said this is what we want, but we don't have answers. We have to, a lot of this is best guess. And if it comes, so we see with best guesses, with the information that we have now, this is where we're at. And then we move from there as we plan. We'll have tentative budgets. This is the whole planning process throughout the entire year. And when you look at our audited fiscal results, it has paid off. We have never been in that position. We've never been in a bad position. We have never adopted or said that we accept or that we're looking for a deficit spending. But just by virtue of adopting something that's negative, you're setting precedent that it's okay. I'm fine with whatever. This is a planning document. I understand that. I think we all can read and we all can hear. But it's just the precedents we're setting by adopting something which is negative. You're saying it's okay if you're going to be negative.
Well, let's go.
I think that's all.
The board has already approved the budget, so we're kind of rehashing something that's already a decision that's been made. What we're looking for now is in the future, and I think we all agree that we want we were looking for a rosier financial picture than we have. We're going to continue to monitor it, and I think that's what Mike has said. So let's see what happens.
Get the answers.
Over the last, it's got to be 4 or 5 years, I think we always come in, even on the total expenditures of about $150 million, it's about a 1% difference when we come to the end of the year.
Yeah, normally.
Traditionally, we're about somewhere between 3/4 and 1% as far as savings. So somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million. And hopefully, again, we can accomplish the same on the insurance to the tune of another $1 million or $1.5 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's normal. I mean, in a school district, when you look at a school district, how school districts operate, we always budget on the conservative side. There's a 1% variance, which is kind of normally come at 99% confidence on what you put out there. If we're 1% off on $150 million, that's $1.5 million. All departments in all school buildings will never spend all of their budget. I could cut their budget 50%, they still wouldn't spend it all. It's just the way, it's just human nature, just how they operate their budgets. And we know that's going to happen. Honestly, and I've got there's four vacant positions budgeted. That with benefits is probably about $300,000. Probably we won't fill all of those either, because some of those are bilingual positions, and the dialect is just so hard to find. Just like last year, we were about $300,000 under on teacher salaries, just because we couldn't fill the positions, and some of the PA positions as well too. Some of those, especially on the bilingual, we just can't find the people to fill them. But we budget them because the board authorized 890 positions to be filled. So we budget for all those. So chances are we probably won't fill all those as well either. So as we look at that, and I hear the board's concerns, and they're my concerns as well, we don't want to see deficits or negatives going forward. We do want to monitor. We do want to look at it between now and March, and when we adopt the budget in June, to see what we can do to reduce that. but there's also some other factors that will work positively on it as well.
So if you went to the extreme, to the far to the other side, and took back, if we took back the savings on insurance, took back the savings on the 1%, you could necessarily say we're probably in a surplus if we look at it, or close to it, if we budgeted to the 99.9.
If I did it that way, it would probably come out as it would probably show a positive or really close to, or that number would be.
I mean, looking at the numbers, with what you're saying on insurance, the 1% buffer, some of the other savings that we will most likely gain, we would be in the picture here would look better than what it is out there.
Than what we're seeing up there. But when we look at it, which is true, and when we look at the health insurance product, it's interesting, and we do have the consultant, we do pay them for their expertise in their development of the budget numbers, and their estimates of the health, instead of me, doing my own formula to figure out what that is.
So was their estimate again last year 7%? You said it stayed constant, you think?
Yeah, it's been about 7 to 10% is what they.
So
yeah, it probably is closer to 7%. Okay.
Well, like Dr. Chapman said, this is kind of a worst case scenario with assumptions. The budget has already been adopted, and Mike, I appreciate your hard work on this because we'll continue to work on making sure that those deficits don't become reality. Just like this year, we had a $2.5 million deficit, and we came out with an $800,000 surplus, and we'll keep working with that in the future. But this 5-year forecast helps us to see that we need to be vigilant, and we need to work hard to make sure that we see those numbers not become reality.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
And thank you for this year too. I mean, congratulations to all of us, I guess, but mainly for you, Mike.
It's really a nice thing. So, Mike, would you like to introduce our guest from Miller Cooper? And
absolutely. So I alluded to our audited financial results from 2014-15, and Betsy Allen from our auditing firm Miller Cooper is going to join me at the front table. Look forward to join me as well. I got to commend Corey Baltimore and his staff. They really do like 99% of the audit, and then I don't even have to worry about it all too much because he handles all the numbers and everything and all that goes into it. So, a job well done again by Corey, and I'll turn it over to Betsy to address the board.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I have the two deliverables I want to go through. We have the audited financial statements and our required communication to the board letter. Just want to point out a few things of importance. First of all, on page 1 is our independent auditor's report, and it's an unmodified opinion, and that's the highest level of assurance we can give as auditors to the district. I also want to point out something new in this letter this year. There's an emphasis of a matter paragraph on page 2, and that's due to the implementation of GASB Statements 68 and 71, where the net pension liabilities have to be reported on the face of the financial statements, and I'll point that out when we get there. And just so everybody knows, you may all know GASB. Somebody asked me at a board meeting what GASB stood for, and that's the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. So I just want to put that out there so everybody's aware of that. You knew that?
Yeah.
I had a board member ask me because we always just refer to it as GASB, so I thought I would just point that out to everybody. So on page 14 is where we start the basic financial statements, and there we have both, we've talked before, the government-wide statement and your fund financial statements. Within there's reconciliations that will reconcile the two statements and the changes between the two statements. On page 14 is where I want to point out there's some new line items that are in there this year due to this implementation of GASB 68 and 71. You'll see that there's some deferred inflows and outflows. They say deferred inflows and outflows related to pensions, but the main part of the pension liability is reported as part of your long-term liabilities. There's approximately $23.8 million of a net pension liability that's included in those long-term liabilities. It's about $8.3 million for IMRF and about $15.5 million for TRS. And as we get back into the footnotes, I'll point out a few things and show you the roll forward of those numbers. The next, page 15, is the statement of activities. This is also on a full accrual basis. The one thing I want to point out here are the two things. One is that in the independent auditor's report, we talked about having a restatement, so that's where it's showing there's the restatement of the net position. And also, every year, I know we've talked about the on behalf payments that TRS is supposedly making on behalf of the district. There was a big increase in those numbers this year due to the formula that TRS used due to the implementation of the new GASB statements. So last year, there was $26.8 million of on behalf payments. And in the current year report, there's $36.7 million of on behalf payments. So that's a pretty large increase. But realize, too, those are reported as revenues and expenditures within your financial statements.
I think the point, they're ultimately, correct me if I'm wrong, they're paper entries. It's not that the district had to make a $26 million pension payment one year and then a $36 million.
No, they're supposed to be, they're payments that the state is making on behalf of the district.
Allegedly.
Right,
Yes.
so, I don't think you said that, yes. Yeah, you never see any paperwork, I guess, that they've actually put that money in there for you, but that's what they call them.
Yeah, my point,
Right.
they're not direct payments at the district.
No,
That's the
they are
point I wanted to
payments,
make.
right, that the state is making to TRS on behalf of the district. On that. So then on page 16 and 17, that's the balance sheet of the district. This shows all the funds of the district, so probably statements that you're more used to seeing. As I keep saying about this GASB 68 and 71, any of those entries or the pension liabilities they do not affect these fund financial statements. They only affect the government-wide statements. And I also want to point out here that, remember too, when you're looking at the general fund is both your educational fund and your working cash fund. And farther back on page 91 and 92, there are statements that show the allocation between those two funds. And then here, I just want to point out that the district did end the year with a fund balance of approximately $62 million.
Which includes debt. Which
Is
includes
that-
debt, which is
okay.
different than what we look at, and, I just want to, clarification,
because
I
yours doesn't-
apologize. The board adopts its budget at the fund level statements. I know Betsy's talking about government-wide, but we're not adopting our state. School districts adopt at the fund level statements, which is on the page.
Which we were just talking about on
Those two
page
pages.
16 and 17.
And not the government-wide
Right.
statements, which you referred to.
Right, and the
earlier.
difference, there's a reconciliation, but the main difference with the government-wide statements is the government-wide statements report all your long-term liabilities and your capital assets that are not reported on the fund financial statement. So that's the biggest hunk of the difference between the two statements. And then just on page 19 and 20, that's sort of, the shorter name for is your income statement of the district. And here I just want to point out that there was a net change in fund balance of approximately $875,000, an increase in the fund balance at the end of the year. On page 23 is where we start the notes, the financial statements. And I know we don't usually look through the notes, but I do want to point out a few things that are just sort of, I think, of interest with these new accounting pronouncements. On page 23, there is a description of the new accounting pronouncements, just to give you some background with them. And then on page 36 is where it starts the footnotes. There were probably, I don't know how many of you actually looked at all this. There's probably 10 or 15 more pages of footnotes this year due to implementation and 4 other RSI schedules that were added. There's a footnote for TRS and there's a footnote for IMRF. They both show both like the plan descriptions and all the actuarial assumptions that were used to determine all these numbers. On page 38, and this is where it sort of goes back, Mike was talking before about if there's any shift in the pension dollars and if you guys have to start paying more of the pension dollars, there's a $15.5 million, which is the district's proportionate share of that net pension liability for TRS. But the number underneath there, the $445 million, is the state's proportionate share of the net pension liability associated with just your district. So that's not the whole state, that's just your district. So if there's any shifting in the pension, that's a pretty big number that's out there.
Which is that's a new footnote disclosure this year.
Yes,
correct?
this is all these new footnote disclosures are all part of the implementation of GASB 68 and 71, and that $15.5 million is part of the number that's been put on your government-wide statements for part of the net pension liability this year.
My comment to the $445 million when I read that was, wow.
Right, right. It's right. Another thing on page 42, all these actuarials were done by TRS and IMRF that they hired, and they have all their different assumptions and they set their different discount rates. And I thought it's really interesting to look, and it's even more when we get to the IMRF part on page 42, that they're using a current discount rate right now of 7.5%, and this is a sensitivity schedule that shows if they change their assumption and went up 1% or down 1%, where the district's liability would go to. So, I mean, right now we're at 15.5 million, and by decreasing at 1%, you're up to 19 million, and an increase to it would bring it down to 13 million. So I thought that was just something very interesting to look at. And then page 44 starts the information on the net pension liability for IMRF. Again, just showing all the plan description and everything, and all the assumptions that are used for determining the net pension liability. And then on page 47 is the same type of sensitivity analysis of the net pension liability. And here you see by changing the discount rate up and down, if they went 1% higher, you would end up with a net pension asset. So there's even a bigger swing with IMRF. And then on page 55, where we talked about when we're looking at the statement of net position, this is the long-term liabilities of the district. And the last two lines on there, the IMRF net pension liability and the TRS net pension liability, this is sort of the roll forward of those numbers and where they ended the year with. And then on page 66, pretty much to the end of this document, there's financial information presented for each of the funds, and this gives you both your original budget and your final amended budget, actual numbers for fiscal year 15, and then actual numbers for fiscal year 14. It's done by it shows every sort of line item in the state budget form. I'm not, would you say 2,000 line items that you have, but this, this is condensed down to follow the state budget form. And then the last section of this report, or the last few pages, is just some information on your student activity funds, and then a schedule of your general obligation bonds that are outstanding and their maturities to their end of maturities. And then the other item that we have is our required communication to the board that we need to go over very quickly with the board. Just a few things to point out here. On page 2 talks about all the GASB statements, the ones that we've adopted this year and the ones that will be effective for future years. The one I do want to point out here is GASB 74 and 75. Right now we report a other post-employment benefit net pension net obligation. In a couple of years, they're going to start putting that on the whole actuary accrued liability on the face of the financial statements like they've done for TRS and IMRF. So in a couple of years, the OPEB will start following the same guidance as TRS and IMRF. On page 4, just want to point out that we didn't encounter any difficulties in dealing with management during the audit. Again, this year the audit went very well, received all the information timely, so everything could be filed timely with the state board. We had no audit adjustments that we have to report to you. And then the report was finalized and issued on November 4th, and management did sign a representation letter. And we also have filed all the required filings with the Illinois State Board of Education. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Betsy. Very thorough. Appreciate your explanation.
Yeah.
Thanks for your firm's work, and drive home safely.
Thank you.
She's a proud 15 parents.
Well, I don't have any more, but
Oh.
I did for many, many years. I have a 19-year-old and a 15-year-old that started kindergarten, gone all the way through, so, yes.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Corey, I guess you might as well just stay up here, and you're on next to talk about the proposed tax levy.
Section. Good evening, President Babcock, Superintendent Thompson, and members of the board. Tonight's levy presentation will be pretty similar to what we've done in the past. There's a couple extra slides that we thought would be valuable information to the board, so there's just a couple of small tweaks. We'll go over some background about the levy, a couple of key dates with the levy calendar that we'll be facing in the next couple months. Do a quick calculation of tax extension, cover some of the new growth and the limiting rate calculations, and we'll wrap up with our recommendation and the proposed levy amounts by fund. As Mike mentioned earlier, for us, we have 77% of our revenue come through property taxes. That puts us, in a category where we're considered a property tax heavy district as opposed to a GSA heavy district. So, we're subject, we feel the swings of CPI much more than some of the other districts around the Collier counties. The tax extension each year is just the amount of property tax billings that are sent out to homeowners and businesses and any other landowners. You probably heard Mike or I refer to an acronym known as PTEL, which is just the Property Tax Extension Limitation Law that is commonly known as PTEL or tax cap, and is really the law that guides all the calculations and extensions that we go through each year. The PTEL law impacts all the school districts in Cook County and a few other counties throughout the state. Each year when we are calculating our operating fund levy, we're limited to what we extended last year plus CPI, and then we are also allowed to add any new growth within the district's boundaries on top of that. One thing to note is that if we were to ever levy less than what we either did last year or what we're allowed under CPI plus new growth, it's kind of a take it or lose it forever type of proposition. So it's something to keep in mind as we make decisions going forward. As I mentioned, each year the levy amount sets the tax amount which we use in all following years. The debt service tax levy is outside of our operating tax levy, and that is something that, as each district issues bonds, it's filed with the county clerk, and they'll automatically add that to our tax extension. As you may recall from last fall when we did the refunding, one of the points of the refunding was to save a little bit of money on interest cost over the life of the bonds. So when the 2015 extension does come out, we should be expecting to see a small amount of savings on the debt service component of that extension. And for District 15 to be able to collect any of these taxes, we've got to file the resolution with Cook County, and we've got to state by fund the amount that we need. The next slide, we just have a couple of key dates. We're providing an estimate to the board of the total aggregate extension. Next month, we'll ask the board to approve and adopt the aggregate tax levy. And then once that's done, we just have to make sure it's filed down at the clerk's office by the last Tuesday of the month. The next slide kind of looks back at the last 5 years and shows us, what we've looked at for CPI and new growth. We've typically estimated around 2% or slightly over. And over the course of the 23-year history of the tax caps that have affected this district, you'll notice the last 3 years, we've been under that 2% mark. And in particular, the 0.8% that's going to affect the 2015 extension. In the 23-year history, that's the second lowest amount. I think in 2008 or 9, there was a 0.1%. And as Mike mentioned, the CPI amounts, as we've kind of tracked that month by month for the current calendar year, which would then affect what we're doing next fall, has been very small. And one of the additional things that you see is that typically from roughly Labor Day through the end of the calendar year, when that amount is set, you typically see a decline. So potentially, looking out and thinking big picture, we could potentially see two of the lowest 3 years in the 23-24 year history of the CPI that's affected our tax extension be 2 years in a row. But we still have a couple of months before that number gets finalized for next year. The 5-year average for new growth is about 8.6 million. As you'll see in the calculation, we're estimating this year to be about 10. The next slide is a new slide to our presentation. It's something that we just wanted to kind of visually lay out there for the board. As we're talking about levy years and budget years, we're throwing out, 2014, 2015, 2016. Just looking at this slide, it's very easy, very helpful to look at it and see that, levy years are always going to overlap two of our budget years or fiscal years. And which can make budgeting a little bit difficult. The one nice thing though is, and we'll point out here on this next slide, is that last December when the tax levy was approved, just by the way the tax levy and the extension works, everything was at that point locked in, and we were able to then know what the budget amounts were for 15-16 school year. And then as of next month, when we approve and adopt a tax levy, we'll have some amounts, and then we'll be able to start planning even better for the 16-17 school year. Some key numbers as it relates to the extension. The first number is just the total amount of the operating funds extension from last year. The next number of 3.1 billion in EAV is the AAV. As we look at the, estimating this year's tax extension, we're using 0% change in EAV. As Mike mentioned earlier, last year was the first year that we didn't see a decline. We're estimating, roughly there's going to be a 0%, meaning we think there's probably going to be a slight increase or decrease in overall change in EAV. As you can see, we're projecting it will go up by 10 million. That's due to the new growth. The next slide is just a detailed calculation of how do we calculate that limiting rate, which is of importance because it helps us determine what is that value of new growth. You just take what you extended last year, which you see is the 116, times the 1.008, subtract out new growth, and you come to the 117.4 million. And then what we're projecting right now is a 3.74 limiting rate for the operating fund levy. This particular slide shows, excuse me, that previous slide, oh, there we go, shows the amount of revenue that we're expecting to see as a result of this year's limiting rate of being at 3.74. So as the result of if we were to get $10 million of new growth in this year's extension, that's worth roughly $374,000. When you combine that with the 0.8, the net increase in the operating fund extension would be roughly $1.3 million over last year. The next slide I think is very valuable and easy for homeowners to see. Well, what is it that District 15 is doing? How's that going to affect my property tax bill when I get it? As you can see, the middle column shows if we were to adopt exactly what the estimated extension is, property value of a $100,000 home, District 15's impact only, that doesn't include any other taxing bodies like 211 or the city or mosquito abatement districts or anything small like that, would be about a little over $1,000 per $100,000 value. And then the right column just shows how much of an increase would that be from our impact on homeowners from last year? So as you can see, you're looking at about $8 per $100,000 in property value. This slide just shows the first three columns are just the actual extensions and the calculation over the last 3 years. And then the far right column shows the calculation, what we're projecting for this year, ending with 117.8 million being for the operating funds. And the very last slide, this is our proposed tax levy broken down by fund. The left column is just the actual numbers by fund from the 2014 extension. The middle column is the estimated amounts that we think based upon new growth, CPI. And then the far right column is the tax levy request. And as you may recall from previous years, because we don't know that exact amount of new growth and just the way that the PTEL formula works and the way they make us request more than what we may know to be there to be able to access all that new growth, the far right column is what we're requesting by fund. And if you were to look at it in total, the total of the far right is 4% higher than the far left column. Any questions?
But that number would be adjusted then based on what the actual new growth was going to be, correct?
Yes, so the far right column is, just because of the way that, we're required to request more than, to be able to access that new growth, just because the far right column is requesting 4%, the amount that we're actually going to be getting is going to be limited to the 0.8 plus any new growth, which when you do the math of how much more the extra 1.3 million, I think it comes out to about 1.12% increase over last year's operating extension.
Independent of how much we ask for.
Correct.
The homeowner's impact is going to be 0.8%. Anything that's different between what you projected and what we're asking for would, if there was some miraculous increase in new construction, which isn't very likely this year, but might in future years as we've got that construction down and maybe they're going to build $1 million homes down there on Algonquin Road.
Right.
Thanks.
So I do have a couple of questions. One question actually mainly. I looked at the limiting rates for 2013, 14, and 15. So as the CPI has gone down, right? CPI went down from 1.5. It went down from 1.7 to 1.5 to 1.8. I see the percentage that the limiting factor has gone, obviously, which means it's a higher percentage of impact you're going to see, while albeit small. Could you explain why that might be the case?
Yeah, no problem. So, the unique thing with being in a tax cap county is just the way the formula, the typical person says, what is your tax bill? Well, you think it's going to be a rate times whatever your home value is. Well, if you're in a tax cap county, it's really whatever your taxing bodies are going to extend, and then they assess your home and they tell you your home's worth X amount, like $200,000. Well, then the variable in the formula is the limiting rate. And if you were to go back, let's go back here one slide. If you were to go to the line that says CYEAV, if you start over in the far left column, we're looking at almost $3.6 billion in EAV throughout the district. Well, as we've gone down in 13, and then last year we kind of leveled off, and we're anticipating a level off here, we're still down to 3.1. Well, the way that our extension works, we're going up by 1.7, 1.5, 0.8 plus new growth. Well, just the way that formula works, if home values continue to go down, people's rates are going to continue to go up, which is not necessarily what people would think, but I'm not sure that's something they thought of when they enacted the tax cap laws. So, the tax caps were enacted in an era when property values were rising at a rate that would push people out of their homes within 5 years, so.
Well, it can work in reverse too. That
Right.
the rates can go up and can go down
Yep.
because the fact is that the CPI is what directs that. And the variable becomes if your house becomes more valuable, then your rate goes down.
Mhm.
If the house becomes less valuable, the rate goes up.
Yeah, exactly.
But you
If we
still
were
have
to-
the tax cap limit.
If we were to see a large increase in property values over the next 10 years, then we would see the rate start to drop steadily, as
Which would
opposed to
be-
what we've seen for the
be a
last.
good thing.
Yep.
So you're recommending a 4% based on what I saw there, or you're not making a recommendation yet?
So the proposal that we have in tonight's presentation is for the board to adopt a tax levy next month with a 4% increase over last year's extension. As in previous year, we work at the direction of the board and the superintendent, so.
So, I've asked the business office, Mike and Corey, to make sure that we capture all new growth we can. We don't know what that is until next year. So we extend beyond what we think we're going to get, and then the Cook County clerk will bring it down to what we actually are entitled to. And we anticipate it's only going to be a 1% increase. So we go from 0.8 to probably about 1%. So that's all we're going to get. We're putting 4% in there because that's the way that things are structured, and we have to do that in order to make sure that we don't lose money.
We will have an opportunity for discussion next month again.
We'll be proposing next month. Do you have are there any questions right now?
I don't have questions, I just wanted, I think, what I wanted to say is, we don't know what may come down from the state, which is probably one of the reasons why you have the recommendation, maybe nothing, maybe something. What we do know right now is reduced enrollment, based on the numbers we've seen. We also know the potential increases in taxes from other avenues. $16 is just from the District 15's portion. More people retiring, which means increased number of folks on fixed income. Increased unemployment. These are straight from the state numbers that we have higher filings for unemployment in the past year. So with that, we can't keep going, from my perspective, we can't keep going back to the well for more money. And I think it's time we consider our community members and think about relief to them. So that's all I'm going to say.
Corey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Corey.
Last item in my section is really just to cover three things. The first, I wanted to report back to you on our first few weeks of Let's Talk. We had a flurry of activity when we first sent it out. It's been a little bit slower since then. We had 26 people that have contacted us through Let's Talk. I didn't bring my glasses, but the majority of them have really been directed to the cabinet level. And the majority of those, I think, were really about full-day kindergarten. Some other people have had some other things, but we've had a high approval rate for our response. The overall response rate for getting back to people is 9.5. 10 is the best. I suppose 0.5 would be the worst, something like that. So we're doing well getting back to them. People are using it. We are planning to use it for both the calendar that we proposed later, the 2017-18 calendar. We'll send out as one of our items of interest for people to respond to on our Let's Talk site. And we'll also ask them to comment on the levy. We'll be sending out information about Let's Talk again through our communication department to remind people it's available. It's always on a tab when you come to any of our web pages. And we will also have an announcement on our website to make sure people know that they can comment on both the calendar, levy, and anything else through Let's Talk. So we're pretty happy with Let's Talk right now. It's working pretty well. Gives us some good diagnostics, and I think that it's going to provide a good two-way communication. We're optimistic that the pilot will be successful. The other thing is that, school code says that schools should not be in session on Veterans Day. It's a holiday, but they have made an exception that if you have school on Veterans Day, that you must have some recognition of the purpose and meaning of Veterans Day. And all of our schools today had some activity, and cabinet members spread out. We went to many different things. I know there were at least 3 board members that were able to get to Veterans Day events today, and I know that the principals were appreciative of those board members who made it. I went to Plum Grove, and it was a really terrific event. Singing, music, veterans speaking, and I think the kids were duly impressed with that. I know Sunling had their breakfast and their speakers here that was received well. Lisa went to Hunting Ridge, and Meg ran some mascara at Central Road. Matt went to Carl Sandburg. He didn't cry, but he enjoyed it very much. Sue, where did you go?
I was in Deerfield.
Oh, that's right, you were, I'm sorry. Mike and Corey, you went, didn't you?
I went to Lake Louise. They did an excellent job. They had just started, they called it bucket band, and they told me they only had 2 or 3 practices, but they did a pretty good job. So.
Oh, great, good. Mike?
I was at Worcester Camp Junior High. A nice ceremony. They had 2 Palatine police officers. One's a captain in the U.S. Army, the other one's a lieutenant in the Marines, and they talked about their experiences in the military.
Tom and Cheryl, did you guys get to go to one as well?
I was here. It's wonderful.
At Sunling? Cheryl?
So, luckily, I was lucky enough to come here to Sunling, and I think this is the 4th or 5th year I've been here, and I think the crowd has probably doubled the amount of veterans who get with their grandsons, granddaughters, or daughters, and it's a great ceremony. It was really put on very well and did a great job, so it's great to see the involvement of the community. They all come out for this.
Yeah,
It really is special.
Yeah.
And I went to Plum Grove, and one of the nice things too is that they involve the entire school. I mean, we had some very special classes, special needs classes, where students actually ushered us to special rooms to where the refreshments were afterwards, and they all came up and shook our hand and looked us in the eye and told us their name, and which is a very big deal for many of those kids, those students. So it was a very moving, and yes, the mascara was running for sure, but it was wonderful. Dr. Chapman, I think you went to some.
You know, to have the students have the opportunity to interact and then making it a learning experience in terms of what our veterans have contributed, I thought was just really, really well done. And you could tell the veterans were there were very, very appreciative.
And it was quite a widespread of age, from young retirees that have just come out of the service to the gentleman that sat at our table. I think he said, was he 86? Still a Marine, wore his Marine colors.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, he was great. Still very active and a lot of fun at the table.
It was a great day.
Well, we all owe a great deal to our veterans, and it's nice to see that the kids are exposed to that and start to appreciate that. Do we have any veterans here tonight that would stand up and be recognized?
Yes.
Tom Bramley. Thank you. Last thing I wanted to mention was that on Sunday, November 15th, is Board Member Appreciation Day. 7 members up here give up their time freely. They devote a lot of energy to make sure the school district runs well. They're not compensated, except for tonight we give you a little chocolate. So just as our appreciation, I don't think this raises the level. You have to put this on your form when you county clerk, but thank you, board members, for your service. You make sure that the school district runs appropriately and provides a quality education for the nearly 13,000 kids in the district. So thank you for your service, and enjoy the chocolates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 4, reading and acceptance of the minutes. May I have a suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the following meeting of the Board of Education, October 14th, 2015, regular Board of Education meeting as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Babcock?
Aye.
Chapman?
Aye.
Egbert?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Morrison?
Aye.
Seifert?
Aye.
Surham?
Aye. Before we move on to board discussion and reports, if there is anyone in the audience wishing to address the board this evening, if they would please fill out the green sheet and turn it in to Mrs. Becker, we would appreciate it. And we'll move on to item 5, board discussion and reports. Ed Red, Council and Legislation, Dr. Chapman.
Maybe real brief, there's not a lot to report, no progress. Not only that, the legislature's not meeting again until December, so we don't expect anything. However, the board might be interested in knowing that part of the ongoing discussion has to do with looking at the funding formula. The speculation is that, and as we talked about this with our levy, that our district will continue to be very dependent upon our local taxes, because that seems to be the thrust of thinking. However, EdRed has taken an aggressive approach. They formed a committee to try to identify the factors that affect the school district spending. And Brian Battle from Barrington is chairing that and did a very nice presentation. And Mike was there with Corey and I. And I think what they're doing is very, very good. Now, whether or not it gets a hearing at Springfield remains to be seen. But just to let the board know that our group, our EdRed group, is being very aggressive relative to that, recognizing the fact that if we can have input in the funding formula, we're going to try to do that.
Great, thank you. David?
Yes, this Saturday is the highly anticipated volleyball tournament between the staffs. There's 18 schools participating this year. Should be some friendly competition, make it a little rough. The foundation has put up first place prize to the top team, and also put up for the school that has the most attendees there, will get a grant from the school also to do some work. So it's $1 to get in. It's a great time. The staff really loves it. They really get involved, and it's a great day. So looking forward to see everyone out at Winston Junior High Saturday.
Thank you. Zubair, consensus of IASB school boards?
Yeah, I think we still need a few of the board members to just go ahead and fill out the forms that, I think there's an extra form even in the material for this meeting. So if you haven't already done so, you can send it to me. You can give it to me personally today. Just email it to me, scan it over. Any format is fine, because it's just, I just need to know the information so we can.
And the delegate the convention is next week, and the delegate
Yeah,
session
so it's
is on
coming up.
next
So this is the
Saturday,
last time in person, but you know, you can always email me, and at some point, if I haven't received everything, I'm sure I will reach out to you. But
Okay, thank you. Item 15, 11, 13, 2017-18 school calendar discussion.
So we just present the calendar to you for your review tonight. We will post it for comments from the general community. This calendar's been made in conjunction with 211's calendar. It's been shared with the various groups in the district to make sure that we haven't overseen or missed something. This is the calendar that's been jointly approved, and it lines closely with a calendar for 211.
Item 15, 11, 14, new business, old business, other. Anyone? Mrs. Becker, any citizens to address the board? I do not. Moving on to item 15, 11, 20, personnel report. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the November 11, 2015 personnel report as presented, including the following recommendations. Recommendation for a 10-day unpaid suspension to Brenda Eichberger, accompanied by a last chance agreement. Recommendation for a 3-day unpaid suspension to Tracy Curlin, accompanied by a last chance agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Chapman?
Aye.
Eckberg?
Aye.
Khan?
aye.
Morrison? Aye. Seifert?
Aye.
Surratt?
No.
Babcock?
Aye. Motion carries. Just a comment to all board members, that if there is a problem with a personnel report, or if you have a problem with the format or a difference in any way, if you would contact the superintendent so that we can try to resolve any kind of question that there may be, it would be appreciated. Moving on to item 15, 11, 21, acceptance of the fiscal year 2015 annual audit. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion for acceptance of the fiscal year 2015 annual audit as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Eckberg?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Morrison? Aye. Seifert?
Aye.
Surratt?
Aye.
Babcock?
Aye.
Chapman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 15, 11, 22, resolution estimating the aggregate levy for the year 2015. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the resolution estimating the aggregate levy for the year 2015 as presented.
Second.
Okay.
Discussion?
I do have a question. So you're basically asking for, in terms of the 4% recommendation, is that what this is, or?
The 4% is in the resolution. The resolution just goes out for the month, and then you actually adopt the levy next month.
Okay.
So it's just a formality right now to post it.
Any other questions? Roll call?
Khan.
Aye.
Morrison.
Aye.
Seifert.
Aye.
Sheeran.
No.
Babcock.
Aye.
Chapman.
Aye.
Eckberg.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 151123, workers' compensation insurance contract renewal. The suggested motion, please.
I make a motion to approve the Illinois County's Risk Management Trust Workers Compensation Renewal Proposal for the period of 12/1/15 through 12/1/2106 in the amount of $163,174 as recommended.
Is that
Is that correct?
2016?
It should be 2016.
Okay, it shouldn't, mine read. So-
Get it for that long.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice?
So I'll reread the motion. I make a motion to approve the Illinois County's Risk Management Trust Workers Compensation Renewal Proposal for the period of 12/1/15 through 12/1/16 in the amount of $163,174 as recommended.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Morrison.
Aye.
Seifert.
Aye.
Sheeran.
Aye.
Babcock.
Aye.
Chapman.
Aye.
Eckberg.
Aye.
Khan.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you for finding that. I guess it was wishful thinking on my part.
Yeah, for sure. Item 151130, the consent calendar. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the consent calendar?
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Roll call?
Seifert.
Aye.
Sheeran.
No.
Babcock.
Aye.
Chapman.
Aye.
Eckberg.
Aye.
Khan.
Aye.
Morrison.
Aye. Motion carries. Again, just a suggestion that if there are questions or if there is a problem with any of the items on the consent calendar, if we could at least have a discussion with the superintendent to try to clear it up, it would be appreciated. Dr. Thompson?
There were 3 requests and a response to information of the Freedom of Information Act during the last period. On October 29th, 2015, a request was received from Kathy Fricciolione, Woodstock, Illinois. The response to this request was sent on November 5th. On November 29th, 2015, a request was received from Gabriella Luricciella. I don't know if that Italian is correct, but I gave it my best shot. Smart Procedure, Deerfield, Florida. Deerfield Beach, Florida. The response to this request was sent November 5th, 2015. On October 29th, 2015, a request was received from Owen Danielle McCarter Tarabi Sheath, Illinois Safe Schools Alliance, Chicago, Illinois. The response to this request was sent on November 5th. We received 2 checks from developer contract impact fees. Village of Hoffman Estates sent us a check for $143,916.49, and the Village of Palatine sent us a check for $13,825.94.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Yeah. So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, meeting is adjourned.